On November 11th, Freshwaves Remembers. This is the Freshwaves Remembrance Day show, and I'm your host, Bren Masson. I can only speak from my own experience. I'm not an historian or a war strategist. Stories of World War II have been passed down in my family as they have been in millions of families in Canada and across the globe. World War II began in earnest in Canada on September 10th, 1939.
The Right Honourable W.L. Mackenzie King, Prime Minister of Canada, speaking from Ottawa.
For months, indeed for years, the shadow of impending conflict in Europe has been ever present. Through these troubled years, no stone has been left unturned, no road unexplored in the patient search for peace. Unhappily for the world, Herr Hitler and the Nazi regime in Germany have persisted in their attempt to extend their control over other peoples and countries and to pursue their aggressive designs in wanton disregard of all treaty obligations and peaceful methods of adjusting international disputes. They have had resort increasingly to agencies of deception, terrorism, and violence. It is this reliance upon force, this lust for conquest, this determination to dominate throughout the world, which is the real cause of the war that today threatens the freedom of mankind. Despite her unceasing efforts to preserve the freedom of Europe, the United Kingdom has today, in the determination to honor her pledges and meet her treaty obligations, become involved in war. This morning, the King, speaking to his peoples at home and across the seas, appealed to all to make their own the cause of freedom which Britain again has taken up. Canada has already answered that call. On Friday last, the government, speaking on behalf of the Canadian people, announced that in the event of the United Kingdom becoming engaged in war in the effort to resist aggression, they would, as soon as Parliament meets, seek its authority for effective cooperation by Canada at the side of Britain. As you are aware, I have all along felt that the danger of war was such that Parliament should not be dissolved, but be available to consider any emergency that might arise. Parliament will meet on Thursday next. Between now and then, all necessary measures will be taken for the defense of Canada. Consultations with the United Kingdom will be continued. In the light of all the information at its disposal, the government will then recommend to Parliament the measures which it believes to be the most effective for cooperation and defense. That Parliament will sanction all necessary measures, I have not the least doubt. Already I have received from the Leader of the Opposition and from representatives of the other parties in the House of Commons assurances of their full appreciation of the gravity of the situation and of their desire to see that such measures are adopted as in the present crisis will best serve the national interest. Our first concern is with the defense of Canada. To be helpful to others, we must ourselves be strong, secure, and united. In anticipation of a state of war, the government has already availed itself of the provisions of the War Measures Act to take all essential measures for the defense of our coasts, our land, and our people. As has already been announced, the militia of Canada, the Naval Service, and the Air Force are already on active service. This morning, these measures were supplemented by others, including the proclamation of the Defense of Canada regulations. Measures have also been taken to prevent profiteering in the necessaries of life. Of the latter measure, my colleague, the Minister of Labour, will speak to you in a moment. In what manner and to what extent Canada may most effectively be able to cooperate in the common cause is, as I have already stated, something which Parliament itself will decide. All I need to add at the moment is that Canada, as a free nation of the British Commonwealth, is bringing her cooperation voluntarily. our effort will be voluntary. The people of Canada will, I know, face the days of stress and strain which lie ahead with calm and resolute courage. There is no home in Canada, no family, and no individual whose fortunes and freedom are not bound up in the present struggle. I appeal to my fellow Canadians to unite in a national effort to save from destruction all that makes life itself worth living, and to preserve for future generations those liberties and institutions which others have bequeathed to us.
You have just heard the Right Honorable W.L. Mackenzie King, Prime Minister of Canada, speaking from Ottawa.
My father's oldest brother, Eugene Masson, was the first family member to enlist. Uncle Eugene was a gunner for the Royal Canadian Air Force. Black and white family photos show a tall, thin, sandy-haired man full of life. So proud standing beside my grandparents in his uniform. So proud to be doing his part for the war effort. Eugene was a gregarious young man who played piano and sang and loved to have fun. He was the center of family functions, leading everyone in a sing-along and merriment. That was just the kind of guy he was. When you mention his name to those who knew him, they smile at the memory of this fun-loving young man. In those days, during the war, families gathered every evening around the radio to listen to the news from the front. CBC reporters told of the battles. William Lyon Mackenzie King, the Prime Minister of Canada, addressed the nation, and Winston Churchill made iconic speeches that inspired the Allies to forge on. The family was quiet. No one dared to make a sound for fear of missing a vital piece of information over the never-so-clear airwaves. My dad was just a little boy, but he recalled the quiet intensity with which they all listened, leaning closer and closer to the radio.
There's a long, long trail a-winding into the land of my dreams, where the nightingales are singing and the white moon beams. There's a long, long night of waiting until my dreams all come true, till the day
of the CBC, speaking from England. I came back this morning from France. Only 3 days ago, we went aboard our assault landing craft in English harbors for the start of the mighty enterprise. We were going where our fathers and brothers had gone 25 years ago, and we sang the same songs they sang. There was one we sang more than others. There's a long, long trail a-winding. And I began to wonder if it wasn't a dream after all.
There's a long, long trail a-winding into the land of my dreams.
It was absolutely astonishing to stand on deck in the early morning before H hour, the moment when the battle was to start, in broad daylight, and nothing was happening. Not a thing, not a gun, not a bomb. It was fantastic. But at last it started. The enormous bombing and shelling of the coast defenses. The cruisers and destroyers were going close in to pound the shore batteries on casemates. And in a few minutes we could hardly see the beaches for smoke. And then, at last, H hour. It was the moment for the assault troops to go ashore. The barrage and the bombing, as we expected, had stunned the Germans if it hadn't killed them. And this gave most of the assault troops the crucially precious few minutes to jump and wade and get ashore and go into action. then the struggle across the soft sand. 5 minutes that will always be vivid in my mind. A few shells were falling on the beaches, a few mines still exploding. The whole beach covered with small craft. Men at work organizing the beaches already. We got over some stretches of beach almost without opposition. On others, there were fierce and bloody fights. I went over the beach and down a lane. This was only the beginning. The great battles were to come.
My grandfather would have willingly gone to war, but he was an electrical engineer, and the Canadian government wanted him to stay here and work on special war-related projects. Before long, my uncle Charlie Masson enlisted, as did more than 1 million Canadians.
Mr. Mackenzie King, Prime Minister of Canada, addresses the members of both Houses of Parliament assembled in the Royal Gallery at the Palace of Westminster.
Britain has been an example to the world in the organization of a free people for a common task. You have astonished the world by the marvels of your industrial production and by the skill and efficiency of your workers. You have never lost your faith. It is, however, not of Britain but of Canada that I am expected to speak on this occasion. Canada's war effort is a voluntary effort. It is the free expression of a free people. Like the other nations of the Commonwealth at war today, we entered the war of our own free will, and not as the result of any formal obligation. Ours was not primarily a response to a call of blood or race. It was the outcome of our deepest political instinct, a love of freedom and a sense of justice. Our first duty is to win the war. But to win the war, we must keep the vision of a better future. We must never cease to strive for its fulfillment. No lesser vision will enable us fittingly to honor the memory of the men and women who are giving their all for freedom and justice. In the realization of this vision, the governments and peoples who owe a common allegiance to the Crown may well find the new meaning and significance of the British Commonwealth and Empire. It is for us to make of our association of free British nations a model of what we hope the whole world will someday become.
During these war times in the late afternoon, families would deftly move towards the front windows of their homes, tentatively peeking out from behind curtains to watch the telegram man walk up the street from his office. My Aunt Marg told me that everyone said a silent prayer that he wouldn't walk up their driveway. Then they'd say a prayer for the neighbor who was less fortunate than they. The telegraph man never brought good news. With Charlie in the Army, training to be a tank driver, and Eugene in the Air Force, my Uncle Al wanted to enlist as well. My grandmother wouldn't hear of it, as Albert was a hemophiliac, and the military wouldn't want him. The story goes that Albert, in his determination to be a part of the fight, snuck down to the War Office one afternoon when my grandmother thought he was working at the general store. One thing led to another, and my grandmother caught wind of his plans, most likely tipped off by my Aunt Marg, who also worked at the general store, but like a good tattletale, she never confirmed this piece of the story. Grandma Annie Masson stormed down to the War Office, and if you knew my grandmother, she could really storm. She wasn't a small woman, and she could be quite stern and forceful. She demanded to see Albert's application form, and a terrified clerk showed her the forms where, sure enough, he had neglected to tell them of his health issues. Annie Masson held nothing back and let the young clerk know loud and clear that even a simple bruise could result in Albert being incapacitated or even bleeding to death. The story goes that she dragged Albert home by the ear, I'm not sure that I believe that part either, as Albert, like Eugene, was over 6 feet tall. Maybe it was just a figure of speech. In early April of 1943, the telegram man turned up our driveway. Grandma Annie was in the kitchen when her youngest son, my dad, ran in to tell her that the telegram man was at the door. She dried her hands on her apron and walked slowly to the front of the house. Her face had turned white and her hands trembled as she turned the knob and slowly opened the door. The man didn't speak. Hat tucked under his arm, he simply handed her the telegram and retreated back to the street. My grandmother stood in the doorway and let out a moan like an animal gravely wounded, the groan of pain that only comes from a mother who has lost a child. Eugene's plane had been shot down over Copenhagen, Denmark on March 13th, 1943. There were no survivors. Eugene Masson was one of more than 45,000 Canadians who died in this awful war. 55,000 others were wounded. My Uncle Charlie drove a tank on D-Day, June 6, 1944. He came home a hero. After a year of intense training, D-Day, or Operation Overlord, marked the beginning of the end of World War II.
We take you now to Ottawa.
The Prime Minister of Canada, the Right Honourable W.L. Mackenzie King.
At 3:30 this morning, the government received official word that the invasion of Western Europe had begun. Word was also received that the Canadian troops were among the Allied forces who landed this morning on the northern coast of France. Canada will be proud to learn that our troops are being supported by units of the Royal Canadian Navy and the Royal Canadian Air Force. The great landing in Western Europe is the opening of what we hope and believe will be the decisive phase of the war against Germany. The fighting is certain to be heavy, bitter, and costly. We must not expect early results. We should be prepared for local reverses as well as successes. No one can say how long this phase of the war may last, but we have every reason for confidence in the final outcome. I cannot better express to the people of Canada the government's feelings at this moment than by giving to you the words of General Crerar, the Canadian Army Commander, as conveyed to the Canadian Assault Forces on the eve of their embarkation. I have, said General Crerar, complete confidence in our ability to meet the tests which lie ahead. As Canadians, we inherit military characteristics which were feared by the enemy in the last great war. I should like to add this word. Let the hearts of all in Canada today be filled with silent prayer for the success of our own and allied forces and for the early liberation of the peoples of Europe.
You have just heard the Prime Minister of Canada, the Right Honourable W.L. Mackenzie King.
World War II ended officially on May 8th, 1945. These are the stories of my family. Uncle Charlie has passed away, as has my dad, and all that were there during the war times have gone now. I tell my children the stories that were told to me, and every November 11th we remember. We remember not just World War II, but all the wars. We acknowledge and thank all the brave men and women who fight for our freedom, and we say a prayer for the children caught up in wars that they know nothing about, suffering the loss of loved ones and the turmoil in their homes.
Can you hear children on bended knee in the shadow of an unknown room. Empty eyes with no more tears to cry, turning heavenward toward the light. Crying, Jesus, help me to see the morning light of one more day. But if I should die before I wake, I pray my soul you'll take. Can you feel the hearts of the children aching for home, for something of their very own, reaching hands with nothing to hold on to, but hope for a better day, a better day. Cry, Jesus, help me to feel the love again in my own land. But if unknown roads lead away from home, give me loving arms away from harm. Do wa-da, wa-da-da, wa-da-da-da, wa-da-da-da-da. Can you hear the voice of the children softly pleading for silence in the shattered world? Angry guns preach a gospel full of hate, blood of the innocent on their hands. Cry, Jesus, help me to feel the sun again upon my face. For when darkness clears, I know you're near, bringing peace again. Dali czuję Cię, świecie się modlitwie. Can you hear the prayer of the children?
This is Freshwaves Remembers. I'm your host, Bren Masson, and we'll be back right after the break with more Remembrance Day poetry and tributes to those who paid such a high price so that we can have the life that we have today. We're back on Fresh Waves. This is Fresh Waves Remembers. I'm your host, Bren Masson, and of course today is our Remembrance Day show. It's been said by many people that the key to ensuring that wars won't happen again is remembering. It's education. It's never letting the war truly die. Keeping the memory of all of these people who have fought so hard for Canada and for other countries in the world alive is what keeps us at peace. Several years ago, there was a campaign in Stouffville with the public schools to write letters to our troops in Afghanistan. It was a wonderful project, and I was truly amazed by the sentiments that the children showed. How a child in grade 5 could have such an amazing understanding of what these men and women were going through in Afghanistan and other places in the world. Take a listen to some of the things they had to say. Of course, I can't read all 365 letters to Kandahar from Whitchurch Highlands Public School, but I'll give you a taste of some of the ones that we recorded. One of the ones that I unfortunately didn't get a chance to record was from a little girl in grade 2. She had a beautiful card with a big poppy on the front and a picture of her dog that she had drawn herself. And inside was one sentence. It simply said, "Dear soldier boy, please don't die."
Dear soldiers, thank you. We are extremely grateful for your sacrifices and the hardships you've endured to keep us safe. I wouldn't know what it's like to stay away from my family for a week, let alone a year. I can only imagine the pain you're going through, all the loss you're feeling. If only there was a way we could repay you. I had a German great-grandfather who fought with Germany during World War I or II. He didn't do it willingly. He was forced by Hitler. I admire your amazing bravery in making the choice to fight in Afghanistan. Best of luck in restoring peace. Sean Muldoon, grade 5 student, Whitchurch Highlands Public School.
Dear Canadian soldiers, hello, my name is Megan. I am 12 years old and I am from Aurora, Ontario. Aurora is a small town north of Toronto. I enjoy playing the tenor saxophone, acting, and spending time with my friends and family. I am so grateful that you are over in Afghanistan fighting on behalf of our country. It is because of you that the world is a better place. You are there risking your lives for our country and world peace. You are my heroes, and I'm sure that there are many more like me who appreciate what you do. You are creating peace in other countries, and that means the world to me. Even if you are away from the ones that you love, they are still praying for you to be happy and safe. I want to say thank you for doing what you do. What you do lifts a big load off other soldiers, and it helps them live a better life. Everyone back here in Canada is wishing you happiness while you are over in Afghanistan. When you come back to your hometown, I hope that you can see how big of a difference you have made. What you are doing makes me stop and think every day. We are so lucky, and we take that for granted. We have a free country, and there is no war going on here. Where you are is a place where I hope you can make a difference, and I hope everyone realizes what you're doing is a good thing. You are making a big difference in so many people's lives. Yours truly, Megan.
Black car takes them to the new home. Green grass, flowers, and rows of headstones. Proud soldiers who are falling, women and men, and we pray that it will end. The highway of heroes being traveled again. They're being carried down straightways and bands. Flags fly at half-mast as they pass by. Strangers stand silently with tears in their eyes. Medals are given, a few words are said under the colors of white and red. The music will play, the guns will roar, and they'll be in our hearts forevermore. The highway of heroes being traveled again. They're being carried down straightways and vans. Flags fly at half-mast as they pass by. Strangers stand silently with tears in their eyes. They gave their all in a foreign land, fighting for rights and freedom. new home. Green grass, flowers, and rows of headstones.
Dear Soldier, I'm 12 years old, I'm in grade 7, live in the country outside of Toronto, and my name is Mira. I do competitive dance after school, and I also love to play soccer in the summer. I may not know who you are, but that doesn't mean that I'm not grateful for what you're doing. You are fighting for a country and creating peace here for us. I understand it must be hard to be away from your family, especially for Christmas. You are sacrificing being with your family for us and the other country that you're fighting for. I would like to thank you for doing that, even though it must be very hard, because I don't think I would be able to do it myself. You are fighting for a country that you are not in, but you still fight for them. You helped them out, even though you had not been part of it at the start. I admire your bravery and courage to go out and fight in the war and leave your family behind. I know that I do not have that courage. I sometimes get butterflies just from performing in front of people. I hope that you achieve what you are fighting for and that you come home safe. One thing I love in Canada is that we are a free country, which you have made happen, and continue to make happen in other countries. In a free country, you get to become what you want and do what you want. This is because of you, and I thank you for that. In a few days, we'll be celebrating Remembrance Day to remember all of the soldiers that died fighting in the war, and the ones that are still living. My grandfather fought in World War II. He was decorated 6 times for bravery. Once, when his ship was sunk in the North Atlantic in the night, he had to help rescue all of the others on board. The happiest time in his life was when he got home from the war and married my grandmother. When it is Remembrance Day, I will remember you, because you are fighting in the war right now, representing Canada. Mira T.
This is Freshwaves Remembers. I'm your host, Bren Masson, and of course today is our Remembrance Day show. A great way to remember is through music. And of course, at a radio station, what better way than to play some music so that we can remember. The next song we're going to play is Lily Marlene, and it comes with an introduction. This was a song that just, if you had to pick one song from World War II, this would be the song. Following that, we'll bring it up to present date with a song that just touched the world, A Pittance of Time, a Canadian tune that just says it all.
This next song, too, began its life in one way and then took on an entire new meaning for a new generation who discovered it. It was written originally as a poem by a German Jewish soldier serving in the First World War. And that's the way it stayed until just before the outbreak of the Second War, when it was turned into a song. But it was only when it began to be broadcast by Radio Belgrade that it became contentious. Because it wasn't just German soldiers who were listening to it and whistling it and singing it. British troops in North Africa started to tune in. And of course, that couldn't happen, could it? You couldn't have British soldiers listening to German radio. They might get ideas. So suddenly a new English translation had to be rushed out, and a French one, so that the Allied soldiers could sing their own versions. So what was so special about this song? Like so many other songs dear to soldiers, it spoke of love and tenderness. It spoke of a love enduring beyond the soldier being sent away far from the woman he loved. And that's why it spoke across languages and nationalities, and to my mind, still does now. This is, of course, Lily Marlene.
Underneath the lantern by the barricade, darling, I remember the way you used to wait. 'Twas there that you whispered tenderly that you loved me, you'd always be my lily of the lamplight, my own Lily Marlene. Time would come for roll call, time for us to part. Darling, I'd caress you and press you to my heart, and there 'neath that far-off lantern light, I'd hold you tight, we'd kiss goodnight, my lily of the lamplight, my own Lily Marlene. Orders came for sailing somewhere over there, all confined to barracks was more than I could bear. I knew you were waiting in the street, I heard your feet, but could not meet, my lily of the lamplight, my own Lily Marlene. Resting in a billet just behind the line, even though we're parted, your lips are close to mine. You wait where that lantern softly gleams, your sweet face seems to haunt my dreams, my lily of the lamplight, my own Lily Marlene, my lily of the lamplight, my own Lily Marlene.
They fought and some died for their homeland. They fought and some died, now it's our land. Look at his little child, there's no fear in her eyes. Could he not show respect for other dads who have died? Take 2 minutes, would you mind? It's a pittance of time for the boys and the girls who went over. In peace may they rest, may we never forget why they died. It's a pittance of time. God forgive me for wanting to strike him. Give me strength so as not to be like him. My heart pounds in my breast, fingers pressed to my lips. My throat wants to bawl out, my tongue barely resists. But 2 minutes I will bide. It's a pittance of time for the boys and the girls who went over. In peace may they rest, may we never forget why they died. It's a pittance of time. And poems of the heroes at home. They have casualties, battles, and fears of their own. There's a price to be paid if you go, if you stay. Freedom's fought for and won in numerous ways. Take 2 minutes, would you mind? It's a pittance of time for the boys and the girls all over. May we never forget our young become vets at the end of the line. It's a pittance of time. It takes courage to fight in your own war. It takes courage to fight someone else's war. Our peacekeepers tell of their own living hell. They bring hope to foreign lands that hate mongers can't kill. Take 2 minutes, would you mind? It's a pittance of time for the boys and the girls who go over. In peacetime our best still don battle dress and lay their lives on the line. It's a pittance of time. In peace may they rest, lest we forget why they died. Take a pittance of time.
Please wear a poppy, the lady said, and held one forth, but I shook my head. Then I stopped and watched as she offered them there, and her face was old and lined with care. But beneath the scars the years had made, there remained a smile that refused to fade. A boy came whistling down the street, bouncing along on carefree feet. His smile was full of joy and fun. "Lady," he said, "may I have one?" When she'd pinned it on, he turned to say, "Why do we wear a poppy today?" The lady smiled in her wistful way and answered, "This is Remembrance Day, and the poppy there is a symbol for the gallant men who died in war, and because they did, you and I are free. That's why we wear a poppy, you see. I had a boy about your size, with golden hair and big blue eyes. He loved to play and jump and shout. Free as a bird he would race about. As the years went by, he learned and grew and became a man, like you will too. He was fine and strong with a boyish smile, but he'd seemed with us such a little while. When war broke out and he went away, I still remember his face that day, when he smiled at me and said, 'Goodbye, I'll be back soon, Mom, please don't cry.' But the war went on, and he had to stay, and all I could do was wait and pray. His letters told of the awful fight. I can see it in my dreams at night, with the tanks and guns and cruel barbed wire, and the mines and the bullets and the bombs and the fire. Till at last, the war was won, and that's why we wear a poppy, son." The small boy turned as if to go, then said, "Thanks, lady. I'm glad to know. That sure did sound like an awful fight. But your son, did he come back all right?" A tear rolled down each faded cheek. She shook her head, but she didn't speak. I slunk away in a sort of shame, and if you were me, you'd have done the same. For our thanks and giving is oft delayed, though our freedom was bought and thousands paid. And so when you see a poppy worn, let us reflect on the burden borne by those who gave their very all when asked to answer their country's call, that we at home in peace might live. Then wear a poppy, remember and give. You've been listening to Freshwaves Remembers. I'm your host, Bren Masson. Thank you for tuning in this morning, and thanks for listening. Please remember to remember, not just on November 11th, but on every day of the year, to be grateful for the wonderful things that we have here in Canada. We are very fortunate indeed. And part of that fortune is due to the people that gave their lives so that we can have what we have today. Never forget. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them, lest we forget.